Wake up, rethink the status quo. When you get your money right, then you're the one who runs your life. Come build a wealthy spirit with Sammie and Michelle.
As some of our listeners may know, I recently had my thyroid removed.
Yes, Sammie, something we've lightly referenced but have not really dug into, despite being a pretty big surgery to have.
A pretty big surgery, although not terribly uncommon. But during this time off, I had about 3 weeks off, I had a few huge realizations, and that's why we wanted to talk about this today.
Exactly, Sammie. One, because we just want to share a little look at what's going on in our lives, something that Sammie went through that I witnessed and was there too. And also this idea we're reflecting on is that when you do have these big moments in your life where you're going through a major transition, something major happened, a surgery, a baby, getting married, moving, a lot of times those are good opportunities to pause and reflect. And sometimes we don't. I know that I've gone through major changes and haven't really paused and reflect. And so we want to talk a little bit about that too. Like in the perspective of Sammie's surgery, what really happens when you sort of have taken yourself away from a normal situation and have the time to look almost from the outside in.
And as a baseline for our listeners, the thyroid, it's this little gland for most people, big in my case, that sits in your neck, shaped like a butterfly, some would say, and it regulates a lot of different parts of your body. It regulates your metabolism. It plays a big role in all different kinds of bodily processes. Mine had nodules in it that were producing a little bit too much hormone, and that's why I had to have mine removed.
Great explanation, Sammie. Let's get into it. But first, I want to talk a little bit about a little one-sheeter that Sammie and I put together about the 5 stages of Build a Wealthy Spirit. We're really excited because one thing that we've noticed is that people happen to go through common steps or stages in their journey, which we call the Build a Wealthy Spirit, which is the name of this podcast, but really this journey to get aligned in life, to highlight their values.
We wanted to create this one-sheeter so that we're all on the same page of what it means to build a wealthy spirit and what it looks like to build a wealthy spirit. On this handout, we have a visual of the 5 stages of building a wealthy spirit: recognition, preparation, isolation, self-discovery, and building community, in no particular order.
So in our show notes, you can find a link to download it
for free.
The best part is you'll also get signed up for our newsletter, which shares information, our show notes. We do a little summary. We'll share photos from this week's episodes. And it's an opportunity for you to connect with our community in our comment section. So check it out.
Now back to today's topic, my thyroid surgery. As you all know, we live in the middle of nowhere. So we did have to travel 2 hours to get my thyroid removed. So not only was I not going to work every day, so I was in a completely different structure of time, I was also in a completely different location, and this gave me a lot of time to think and relax.
It's so funny, Sammie, because from the outside, as someone who sees you in your work mode every single day, and then seeing you when you were, I would say almost even as soon as you finished your work, you were able to unplug from thinking about your patients, thinking about all of these people. Nobody was waiting for you because they knew that you would be off work for a couple of weeks. And you were just honestly a completely different person. You didn't seem to hold anxiety the same way. Usually I can hear it in your voice when you're really stressed out. And instead you were lounging around the hotel room. You were going on walks with our mom and coming back excited to tell me about roadrunners and coyotes, which I'm not going to lie, I was very suspect as to whether or not you were labeling these animals correctly. I was like, you saw a roadrunner and a Wile E. Coyote? Like, is that native to these lands? Turns out they are. I did see them later myself. But the point is, like, you were just so relaxed. You were enjoying the free breakfast every day, you know, the kind of things that get you excited. And I'm not going to lie, I could even tell when you had checked once your work stuff because you immediately like tightened up. It's in your shoulders. It's like something I can see in your body. And so, I mean, we kind of commented on this. It was a little sad. Like your surgery gave you time to just have like a free open 2 weeks for yourself.
It's true, Michelle. I think I probably don't want to admit that I am a more anxious or more stressed out person when I have to work. Although I guess it's probably not that abnormal. But having the time off really brought it into perspective. Probably about 2 to 3 days into my break, I immediately felt like so much more relaxed. When I'm working, it's like if we had like a little graph and it had 2,000 points on it, that's like all the things I have to worry about all the time. All the things I choose to worry about. But when I was off, it's like that same chart had maybe like 4 or 5 things max, and they weren't even that stressful. For me, it just made me really appreciate how high my baseline happiness level is. Like when I don't have a lot going on, I really don't require a lot to be happy. I was just happy to be with you guys and walking around and talking. And I also sometimes assume that I'm introverted or even that I'm an ambivert. But when I had time off, I was like, no, actually, I think I'm actually pretty extroverted. I just on the normal basis, I spend time with like 20 or more people every day talking about their deepest problems. So that kind of can be draining even for the most extroverted extroverts.
I love the image you paint of like the 2,000 dots versus the 5 dots because your life, I think most people can see how working full time can add a lot of these things. But I think healthcare is like such a great example of it because it's like 20 dots for each of your patients. Maybe add in a few more if they triple book you. Then you also have to remember to do their labs. Then you also have to remember to call them. Then you're just holding all this stuff in your head, constantly worried because you care and because it's part of your job. But to your point, like it's going to crowd your mind. And how could you not carry that in your body?
You're absolutely right, Michelle. And fortunately, everything with the surgery went well. The team there was awesome. They had all the medications prepared for me. I came out of the surgery bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, no nausea, very little pain. I remember even telling the recovery room nurse, probably slightly still on the drugs, if we're being honest.
This girl was high as a kite when we picked her up at the hospital, let me tell you that. She was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, which is, I think, a nice way of saying...
on one or 3, who knows?
Whatever they give you on surgery, it takes a little bit of time to wear out.
Yes, and I remember telling her, I'm like, you know when you have a sore throat, it hurts like maybe 50% less than that. And she was just like so happy because I was just like so ready to do everything and get out of there. And for a few days, I just rested a little bit and I was doing really good.
You were doing great. Took the first couple of days to just rest, moving a little, but not putting your body through too much. And then you were walking around. Like, honestly, I was worried. I was like, the nurse said that you would be a little bit too giddy and getting a little bit too ambitious, but Sammie and my mom were having a good time at the hotel. My mom was making a lot of friends too, so I know.
As she does.
As she does.
Unfortunately, day 5 post-op, it seems I got a GI bug.
Food poisoning, a stomach bug. We don't really know. But it was something. And it hit hard.
It hit very hard. I had noticed some light sensitivity and an aura before I was going to bed. So I thought it was like a migraine coming on. I just went to bed and I did feel slightly nauseous, which I get with some of my migraines. So I figured it was probably just that, though I don't get migraines very often. And about 2 hours after sleeping, I woke up and I could not stop vomiting. Like I ran to the toilet, I vomited, I figured I'd vomit, I'd feel better. I would vomit, feel better for like maybe like 3 to 5 minutes max, immediately start feeling nauseous again and have to vomit again. And this happened from like 12:30 to 6:30 nonstop.
I know, Sammie. I felt so helpless. You like got up. My mom was helping you. Our mom is a nurse, so she's definitely more equipped to also do these things. But after a certain point, I was like, I kind of think we should take Sammie to the ER. Like, she wasn't holding anything down. And she just had surgery. So I was worried, of course.
Yes, I was worried about my incision, which was totally fine. But after a certain point, I'm like, I just like see no end to this vomiting. And I know there's not a lot they can do other than give me fluids and medication to stop the nausea. But I was like, I need it. Like, even if a small light was turned on, it was like my eyes were burning. Like, I could not take it. And the vomiting itself was not just like a little bit of puke coming out. It's like my whole body was just like rejecting something, tightening up and cramping and vomiting. It was absolutely miserable. I wasn't even sure if we could get to the ER, which was literally within the same complex.
Yeah, I made a wrong turn. And I was just like, oh my God, Sammie's going to throw up in my car. Which I was not my car that I was worried about. But, sure. Nobody wants that to happen.
Yes. I did not notice because I had my eyes covered the whole time until they got the IV in me. I was like, I cannot see the light because it will be not good.
Luckily, it worked out. They put some liquids in Sammie. They gave her some Zofran. She definitely, like, within... It felt like 10 minutes, like once she got like hooked up, was doing a lot better. But not perfect.
Yes, I was so grateful to them. They were very fast. And I came home. I did vomit a few more times and I got a little scared then because I'm like, oh my God, not again. But after that, I was able to sleep and rest and not vomit. So I was grateful, but I literally slept for like 48 hours afterwards. I was waking up, but I couldn't handle anything. I still had to be in a dark room, which, my Nakashtra, my Indian sign is the Leo. I'm a sun lover. And to be just in the dark room was, honestly, it was making me depressed, especially when it was getting to like the end of day 1, day 2. I'm like, oh my God, like how long is this going to go on? Even just walking to get up to go to the bathroom, like I would have to plan it because afterwards I would be feeling so tired. So I was in a very dark place.
Yeah, I don't know anything about this sign stuff, but if you know Sammie, as soon as the sun is up, she is up. The girl does not like darkness at all, like more than your average person. So this was definitely both a literal and figurative dark place for you.
Yes, Michelle, I was in a very, very dark place. I know it's morbid, but I was thinking, what if I'm like this forever? Like, what if my strength never comes back? What if my new baseline is being this fatigued and this weak? And I really started to appreciate the shortness of life. Prior to the surgery, I had loosely considered making changes so that I could have more time to do things I love, to be with the people that I love, to build relationships, to spend time doing things I enjoy. And I was like, I will do that, maybe within the next year, maybe within the next few years, I will make changes to make my life align with my values more. But I really wasn't specific about it. When I was laying there was a period of time where I was just having fond memories, and they were all about relationships, even brief relationships or brief connections with people. They were all about my personal life, and they weren't about work, even though that's where I spend most of my time, and I do meaningful stuff there. But it was all about my own personal life and my own personal relationships. And I really, really appreciated that my life was actually very, very out of alignment with my values.
It's totally normal to have those thoughts. I think not only when you're stepping away from your job for a couple of weeks, but also not only when you're stepping away from your normal life for a couple weeks, but also you went through something pretty dramatic. I mean, anyone who's had any kind of food poisoning knows, like, it's just it's crazy how bad you can feel for like a limited period of time. But it's a for sure moment where you're like, oh my gosh. And the fact that it's after your surgery, I mean, just to witness it, like I was worried about you, our mom was worried about you. And yeah, I'm not surprised that you also took that moment to pause and be like, okay, what are the things that bring me joy and what's going on with my life?
And just at the right moment, that's where Tony came in. Tony Robbins.
Motivational speaker.
Once I was able to start tolerating the light, my mom and I decided to turn on Netflix, and we watched the Tony Robbins documentary, I Am Not Your Guru. I was super inspired by this documentary, just watching all the people have these transformational experiences.
Watching Tony grab somebody by their hair and say, "What's going on?"
Making them roar like a lion. So I downloaded Tony's book, Awaken the Giant Within, and I was listening to that before bed. And it really started making me reflect on my own life personally. And I started to appreciate that my life is a series of choices, and I determine the trajectory of my life, including where I am now. And I actually really started to think about why I got sick in the first place. A few years ago, I had read Gabor Mate's book, When the Body Says No, and he talks about how he feels like maybe autoimmune conditions, certain diseases may actually be our body trying to tell us something, or our body trying to stop us when we're going over the top. And I had already been thinking about this with my thyroid being hyperactive, my metabolism being hyperactive. Maybe my body was trying to do more because I was trying to push it to do more until that wasn't working anymore. And then having this GI bug, I really had to dig deep and see that I really enjoyed having the time off. And there was probably a part of me that wanted more time off. And I'm not saying this is the reason. I probably ate some bad noodles or something like that. But there was a part of me that appreciated that maybe the reason that I had gotten so sick is because my body thought, hey, if we make her sick, then she'll continue to take some time off. And this really disturbed me because I did not want to feel weak like this. I did not want to feel tired. I did not want to feel sick. And I looked at my body and I was just like, you don't have to make me sick to make my situation change. I am going to take control of my own life.
It's funny because I left Sammie and my mom at this crucial moment. I did have plans to go to Philadelphia. I thought everything was going to be fine.
It's probably best you left so you also didn't get terribly sick like us.
It was incredibly dark in that room, and I did throw up behind an evergreen tree, and that was the worst of it. Our mom did get sick, so it was probably a good call. Maybe, hard to say. Maybe I'm just dealing with my guilt that way. Point is, I came back and Sammie and my mom were energized by Tony Robbins. And I read the book too. I watched the documentary too after. And I have the same takeaway. You know, I think that we have so much control over the things in our lives. And we also don't have control over a lot of things in our life. And sometimes I think the key is understanding that both of those things exist at the same time.
It's true, Michelle. In my non-medical opinion, I think our bodies, I think the universe, I think they react to what we're thinking and how we're behaving. And when they see us continuously go on the same train, they think maybe they have to intervene and do something crazy to make our lives change. And I think when they see that we take over and we make changes, then they trust us. They trust us to take care of ourselves. And I want to show my body that you can trust me. I'm going to change my situation. I'm not going to let myself be in a bad situation. I'm not going to let myself be in a situation where I have no time for myself. I'm not going to do that for a long period of time because I care about myself and I understand and I appreciate that this is the one vessel I have during this entire short lifetime.
Takeaways.
So it's interesting, Sammie, because that's what happened to you a couple weeks ago, like not too far in the past. And while this is Sammie's story about how she got her thyroid removed and sort of had this moment of, holy crap, like is my life in alignment? I also think this is just common. If you're in a similar place in your life, if something big happened, if you had a surgery, you are moving, you got married, you had a baby, whatever it is, like there's so many different transitions we go through. I think there are still really key takeaways that we think you can get out of this episode.
I 100% agree, Michelle. We can use any of these moments to kind of help us look at our lives and recognize if it's time to change. It's funny because when I think about it, as a medical professional, I'm like, it's just a thyroidectomy and a GI bug. And it makes me appreciate how much our patients go through when they are experiencing something that maybe is not so serious, maybe doesn't generally have complications. But just because the whole experience takes you out of your whole scenario for such a long period of time and changes everything about your environment, it can be dramatic, even if it's something mild. And I definitely experienced that. You know, when I was laying there in my dark room, depressed, I thought about how 8 or 9 years ago, I was in San Francisco and I was going out a lot and I was getting so tired because I also had to do even more work than I'm doing now. So my regular work plus work after work. And I was also trying to make friends and also trying to go out. And at that time, I said to myself, you know what? We have to put the social life on hold a little bit for a season because I want you to get sleep. I want you to be able to eat. So let's cut down on the social life a little bit so that we can meet our basic needs pretty much. And I realized I woke up 8 or 9 years later and so much time had passed and I was doing the same thing. I think using these inflection points to see if you're where you want to be or if it's time to start making changes is an opportunity to change the trajectory of your life.
Exactly, Sammie. If I was to summarize it, I would say maybe take a break, honestly. Get out of your situation before you're forced out of your situation. Let yourself completely separate from work or whatever it is that's causing you stress and take that time to do a little bit of reflection. To recognize if it's time to change. Are you happy with your life? I think that major things can happen in your life and sometimes you do need to pause and reflect. But maybe you're also happy. Maybe people also go through something similar to you, Sammie, and everything's good in their life. And they're like, you know what? Gosh darn it, I'm happy. I'm so happy. I'm just going to appreciate this more. And I think that's totally great too. And finally, I really take away from the story is that we do have control over our lives. We also have certain things we can't control. But at the same time, I definitely want to go look at my own life and make sure that I'm living it in a way that is in line with my values. Because there are always things that we can control and change. And it's important to see if you're missing some of those opportunities.
Community time!
Before we say goodbye, it's our community time. And Sammie, your episode of getting sick, your GI bug, your food poisoning, like I mentioned, it slowly drifted to me. And I actually went to Philadelphia, both to hang out with my friend Alicia and her boyfriend Veer, but also to go to my friend Meg's wedding. And I wanted to give them a shout out because when I got to the hotel room with my friends Emma and Kat, we were all chatting. And all of a sudden, Meg knocked on the door and surprised us. And she was like, I heard your voices. And she was like, Ben, her now husband, was like, oh, I recognize Michelle's voice from the podcast. So shout out to Meg and Ben for listening to the podcast. And shout out to Kat, one, for buying me Pepto-Bismol after I threw up outside the Tesla. And also, while we were talking after that, she referenced Shonda Rhimes' A Year of Yes, based on the podcast episode we did on attracting your dream life. So good to know Kat is a listener too. Shout out to all of them.
And shout out to Aloka, who messaged me saying she really enjoyed our episode on the 5 people you surround yourself with.
Oh, thank you. We love to hear from you guys. We'd love to give you a shout out. And we also include our shout outs into our show notes, into our Substack page. So go there. Let us know what your thoughts are. We'd love to know, have you gone through a major change or something big in your life and it shifted? Share it with us on our Substack. We'd love to hear from you and we'll comment and we may just give you a shout out next week.
And most importantly, be sure to join us next week as we put down the rulebook and we rethink the status quo.